Hey everyone, Esper here. Welcome back to another D&D monster ranking. After making my Devil Tiers video, I got to thinking about all the fiends I saw in the books that are not devils, nor are they demons. We could call them the miscellaneous fiends. I'll be honest, some of these monsters are ones that I've overlooked for years. After I delved in, though, I found some interesting surprises. A common subtype that we'll see here are the Yugoloths, the neutral evil fiends that are somewhere between the tyranny of devils and the chaos of demons. Lore says that their race began when Asmodeus, the Lord of Hell, struck a deal with a coven of night hags on the plane known as the Bleak Eternity of Gehenna. The night hags spawned the first Yugoloths as a sort of secondary army for Asmodeus, one that wouldn't be bound to the Nine Hells. The hags recorded the true names of these fiends into tomes, known as the Books of Keeping, so that they can keep control over them. But eventually something happened in which these books were stolen or lost. The Yugoloths gained a sort of default independence, and nowadays they exist as everything from mercenaries to diplomats, shock troops to overlords. Their story isn't the deepest or most iconic, but it's cool enough. And some of the individual Yugoloths turned out way better than I anticipated. Like I said, I've overlooked many of these guys for years, and I'm trying to figure out why that is. Partly it's their names. Yugoloth alone, it sounds decent, I guess. Then we read Mesoloth, Canoloth, Nicoloth, Ultraloth. They all just sound the same. It's kind of boring, and it's hard to remember which one is which. Why couldn't they have better names like Slayer from Beyond or Harvester of Minds? Or they could do what Magic the Gathering has been doing forever and make up compound word names like Nether Spear Rager or Stygian Lore Master. With some better names, some reskinning, and a bit more developed backstory, the Yugoloths would improve a lot. But as I said, there are some really cool ones, more than I expected, and there are plenty of non-Yugoloth monsters on this list. Also, please note I intentionally did not include tieflings on this list. As they are a player character race, they would need to be rated using a different criteria than that of monsters. As before, the monsters will receive ratings in the following 5 attributes: mechanics, style, role-playing, lore, versatility. As well, the monsters will be separated into tiers F through A, so let's activate our teleportation circles and embark on a tour of the lower planes. Surprise, surprise, nobody is in the lowest tier. That's right, not a single miscellaneous fiend made F tier. It's actually not until mid-D tier that we encounter our first specimen. While not terrible, the Dergoloth starts us off with the wonky end of the Yugoloth spectrum. It's an upright standing, insectoid-looking monster that has 3 legs, 5 arms, and a rotating, barrel-shaped torso. Mechanically, its abilities are pretty cool, but that's about all it has going on. Everything else about this monster is either wacky or generic. Check this out. Dergoloths take contracts to put down scouts and skirmishers. Well, they're not even trained in perception, so if said scouts are outside the Dergoloth's 60-foot blind sight, their straight +0 perception ain't finding squat. They do have 60-foot teleportation, but they have to spend their action to use it, and they have no con save or wisdom save type ability to lock down mobile opponents. Hell, even their strongest attack is avoided on a dex save, which would be the best save of a scout or a skirmisher. They do have the sleep spell as a hopeful lockdown, but at CR 7, I doubt how effective little sleep is going to be. On to the next insectoid, the Mesoloth, which is the most common type of Yugoloth. They are shock troops whose sole motivations are violence and rewards. Does this remind us of someone? In many ways, this monster is similar to the Dergoloth just before it. They both have a somewhat decent melee attack, few spells, 60-foot teleportation, magic resistance, and blind sight. I suppose the Mesoloth has a less cheesy style, but it's nothing to get excited about. Next up is the Arcanoloth. I'm already getting tired of these damn Yugoloth names. They're so similar and forgettable. How about Netherlasher or Thorntongue? This monster looks like a dog frog that was dunked into toxic waste then covered in thick metal plate barding, yet somehow its AC only states natural armor. It's basically a high-powered guard dog from Gehenna. It has some strong attacks, including a barbed tongue that grabs foes up to 30 feet away, and it blocks teleportation within 60 feet of itself. Maybe its ability is intended to counter other Yugoloths, as 60-foot teleportation is a common theme of theirs. I'm glad to get out of D tier and onto some creatures that I find more inspiring, in spite of their limitations. You'll also note that C tier features some non-Yugoloth creatures. Kicking off C tier is the Hound, a somewhat simple monster, but cool as hell. Well, maybe more like hot as hell. There's not too much to say here. You take the loyalty and sharp senses of a dog, add fire to its bite, give it a fire breath that really packs a wallop. 66 damage considering it's CR3. This is the kind of monster that I consider just plain old cool. Nothing to build a campaign around, but when you see it come up, you think, hell yeah. Continuing along, we encounter another bestial type fiend. The Howler has a solid dose of coolness when it comes to style. They're a horror-inducing predator that is classified as a fiend, though could just as easily be a monstrosity. Personally, I prefer their 3.5 edition artwork, as 5th edition's red accents and exaggerated eyes make it a bit cartoonish. The Howler evokes a wolf-like archetype in that they're pack hunters with sharp senses who howl. Except this creature's howl can incapacitate targets with fear, and its bite is far more effective against frightened targets, dealing an additional 4d10 psychic damage. I love when a monster's own abilities create synergy and play off of each other. Also, bear in mind that the Howler can bite twice, and its bite ignores damage resistance. If it hits twice while you're frightened, you're taking 4d6 plus 8d10 plus 6 damage. Yeesh. Yay for monsters whose names should come with pronunciation guides. Vargil? Vargoil? Vargoy? Hey, at least it's better than Nupperboo. When I first got into D&D during the early 2000s, the Vargil was one of the first monsters that really stuck out to me. Take a severed head, give it bat wings where ears would normally be, and send it flying around wreaking havoc. It has a stunning shriek, poisonous bite, and a kiss that inflicts the target with a curse. Each hour the target spends outside of daylight, it loses a point of charisma as the gruesome transformation takes place. At Charisma 2, the target's head rips free from its body and it becomes a new Vargil. Now that is what I call a memorable monster. The Vargil is held back by its low role-playing potential and its one-track behavior, but I gotta say, it's one of the coolest C-tier monsters that I can think of. Going over the Arcanoloth, I developed a love-hate attitude towards it. On the one hand, it has a lot of cool abilities and options, including such classic Yugoloth standbys as Blindsight, Telepathy, Darkness, Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, Invisibility, 60-foot teleportation, and Magic Resistance. It has a unique claw attack that deals lingering, fiendish wounds. On the other hand, the Arcanoloth is painfully similar to a devil. And not one of the cooler devils, just a basic generic devil. Disciplined, wicked, brutish. It even looks just like a devil, only green instead of red. Up next, we have a basic alien wearing a wizard's robe and holding a sword. Seriously, the Ultraloth has one of my least favorite appearances in all of D&D. It's even lamer than the Owlbear. It's just the most plain, generic gray alien. Wait, how does it speak Abyssal and Infernal when it doesn't even have a mouth? Of the 4 Yugoloths featured in the Monster Manual, the Ultraloth is the last entry, both alphabetically and by highest challenge, at CR 13. They're the crime bosses and mercenary commanders in the bleak eternity of Gehenna. Basically take the same stat block as the Arcanoloth before, add some spells of higher level, and give it a hypnotic gaze. I'll admit that mechanically this is a really cool monster, and it can do all kinds of things with its magic and its various abilities, but beyond this, it's fairly basic. In this way, it reminds me some of the Pit Fiend. It's a monster with powerful and interesting mechanics, but otherwise it's just a generic, strong guy near the top of the hierarchy. And we're back to iconic, classic, badass monsters. I'll never forget the first time I saw this creature. It was actually in Magic. My friend DJ, who my 14-year-old self gamed with at the time, pointed out to me that the nightmare actually came from D&D. Along with kobolds, he added. When I told him that I'd never played D&D before, he was shocked. And in that moment, I sensed that I was missing out on something great. Oh man, talk about a successful insight check there. Just wait, young teenage Esper. In due time, you will discover many a dungeon and dragon. The Nightmare is quite similar to the Hellhound in most aspects, with its main difference being its more compelling lore. A nightmare is created by subjecting a Pegasus to a dark and torturous ritual that destroys its wings and twists its noble and pure mind. Again, it's another just plain old cool monster. So let's mount our Nightmare and fly on or ethereal stride on to B tier. But what about me? Hey Cambion.
Don't forget about me!
Yeah, look man, you're easy to forget. We've already got devils, demons, succubi, incubi, tieflings, half-fiends. Do you really need to be a thing?
You're such a bigot! Just because I don't conform to your devil demon binary agenda doesn't mean you can just ignore and marginalize me.
Actually, this video is literally about fiends that are neither devils nor demons. No one's marginalizing you. You're just not the special snowflake that you think you are. Pick one of the several different types of fiends I just mentioned, and we'll call you that.
You're just DM-splaining. Listen up, all my half-fiend and fiend-curious friends. Esper the Oppressor will not silence us.
All right already. At the top of C tier, we have the Cambion. It's a totally valid and super neat monster that is not at all like any other monster out there. It especially has amazingly unique lore that I found myself deeply moved to read. It does not at all resemble anything else out there, and certainly not an Affliction t-shirt model or rockabilly singer with tribal tattoos straight out of 1998. Just look at that scowl. That's how you know he means business. By the red ass of Asmodeus, we've made it to B tier. It's just like craft beer. Better than the wacky cocktails and mid-grade brews of C tier, but not as good as the fine wine of A tier. Barghest has one of the best lores in this ranking. Long ago, the god of goblins, Maglubiet, made a deal with the general of Gehenna, the lord of the Yugoloths. Maglubiet ran a scam and did not uphold his end of the bargain. In an act of revenge, the general of Gehenna created the Barghests, who are ugly, fiendish hounds that can take the form of a goblin, and whose purpose in life is to consume the souls of goblins. A Barghest is born of goblin parents, beginning its life seeming to be a normal goblin. Its true nature manifests in secret, and it goes about stalking and feasting upon the strongest goblins that it can get away with. The stronger souls it consumes in the world, the higher its ranking will be once it arrives in Gehenna. And when does its feasting end? After it eats 17 goblins, the same amount as the number of terms Maglubiet broke against the Lord of the Yugoloths. Oh, an additional fun fact here, a Barghest can also devour and digest the souls of humanoids. So that's right, your own soul can be digested away and destroyed forever. It must be challenging to create fiends that are neither devil nor demon, and that also have unique styles. The Arcanoloth is a prime example of this. At first glance, it's strange and somewhat intimidating. It's a creature with a peculiar look. It sets it apart from the typical fiend. But upon closer examination, I see a naked guy with a book for a codpiece, and he has floppy bat wings for ears, and he's lopsided, looks like he's gonna fall over. The Arcanoloth has a typical Yugoloth abilities, those same innate spells, the blind sight, the telepathy, 60-foot teleportation, magic resistance, which those really do give it plenty of interesting options in combat and some other scenarios outside of combat. It also has some lightning attacks, life drain touch, and a warlord type ability that lets its allies attack, though debatable in terms of usefulness as it uses up the Arcanoloth's action. This monster represents the negotiators and the contractors of the Yugoloths. All around, it's pretty decent. The Rakshasa is almost a devil. They originated in the Nine Hells long ago, but dark rituals transformed them and gave them the ability to shift planes and enter the material plane, where they delight in all manner of schemes, and they have an appetite for mortal flesh. However, if a Rakshasa dies, its soul eventually reforms in hell, and it may venture back to the material plane. Only death in hell permanently slays the Rakshasa. And I just want to say that this monster's name is rather enjoyable to say. Rakshasa. Its true form is a tiger-headed humanoid with reversed hands, but it often uses magical disguises. Interestingly, it does not have shape change or even alter self to accomplish this, but just basic first-level disguise self. That means if anyone comes into physical contact with it, the person will feel the Rakshasa's fur and know that some trickery is afoot. It's so weird that such a powerful monster with great magical powers has nothing better than disguise self to hide its true form. This weirdness carries over into the Rakshasa's claw attack, which inflicts a terrible curse that prevents the target from gaining the benefits of rests. But the curse is cured by a simple casting of Remove Curse. How can this monster be so powerful, but the curse from its main attack is undone by any cleric of level 5 or higher? The Rakshasa has some cool control and trickery spells, but probably its best ability is its limited magic immunity, which really isn't that limited. It's immune to all spells except 7th level and higher. It also has Fly, Invisibility, and Dominate Person, which counteract warrior-type characters. So really, a party has to have a good support caster to effectively deal with the Rakshasa, and a powerful ranged weapon character would also help too. Final wonky note about the Rakshasa is its pathetically low damage. Again, we have this infamous creature that supposedly wields tremendous fiendish power, yet its damage output's no better than a CR1 hippogriff. At the very top of B tier is the Untitled, what I consider to be the first highly memorable Yugoloth. Sure, its name is kind of lame like most of its kind, but its abilities, its look, its story all caught my attention and stayed with me. The Untitled is a plague bringer, a disease-spreading fiend that essentially embodies the first of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The grim spirit of pestilence who rides atop a pale horse. Even the Untitled itself is portrayed as a pale being covered in pustules. It's freaky stuff, unsettling to think about. Again, it has all those standard Yugoloth powers, which are already pretty neat. It also has some additional spells like Feeble Mind and Globe of Invulnerability. Its signature abilities are 3. A Blight that poisons, deals necrotic damage, and prevents the target from healing. A Corrupted Healing Touch that restores all hit points and cures diseases, while simultaneously exhausting the target and lowering its maximum hit points. And a Transfixing Gaze that paralyzes the target. Now we enter A tier, which I was pleasantly surprised to find 5 different miscellaneous fiends that truly deserve the honor. They stand among some of the most well-designed, flavorful, and all-out fun monsters. Now here's how you take a relatively generic fiend and make it kick ass. I covered this monster in my top 10 deadliest monsters video, so check that out if you haven't seen it already. I'll briefly summarize by saying that the Succubus has one of the most powerful charm abilities in the game, and its Draining Kiss is simply lethal for low-level characters. The Succubus really shines in the role-playing attribute, as it is one of the creatures most designed to interact and weave plots with the player characters. Personally, I just love this. Yeah, it's nice to use simple monsters who are basic skirmish units, but the soul of D&D really relies on storytelling. In the end, you forget most of the straightforward combat encounters, but you remember so well those role-playing scenes that feature creatures who have personality, and they put you into positions of having to make tough decisions. Finally, we get an amphibian-styled monster that is really cool. Eat your hearts out, mediocre bullywugs and grungs. Bow in admiration, Slatty. The Hydroloth is lurking within the river Styx, ready to rend not only flesh, but minds as well. Hydroloths are collectors of lost things and thieves of memory. Once per day, a Hydroloth can attempt to steal the memories of a creature, reducing the victim to an idiot without knowledge or personality, without proficiencies, spellcasting, can't even remember to use a language. Effectively, it becomes an infant in a grown body. The Hydroloth, again, has those Yugoloth abilities that we've seen, along with the wonderful ability to cast a spell and make a melee attack with the same action. Bite, cast invisibility, reposition, then taunt the target inside his own mind with telepathy. If that's not a good time, I don't know what is. Sitting near the very top of this ranking is the Arcanoloth, which is probably the first Yugoloth you actually come across when you're reading the monster manual. In some ways, it's similar to the Rakshasa because it's a powerful caster-type fiend that enjoys finery and has really high role-playing potential. Arcanoloths are basically fiendish wizards. They are lore keepers, information brokers, and arcane masters. Their spells go all the way up to 8th level, and while they could probably prepare about any wizard spell, the monster manual entry includes such hits as Shield, Mirror Image, Counterspell, Fear, Fireball, Banishment, Hold Monster, Chain Lightning, Finger of Death, and Mind Blank. Consider that it also has Alter Self and Invisibility at will. And Arcanoloth truly has the potential to devastate any place it visits. Think about it. It can appear as anyone, or never appear at all. Mind Blank makes sure that no one can detect it or even divine anything about it. It can fly, teleport, speak all languages, use telepathy, it can defend itself, it can counter spells, it attacks with powerful offensive magic. Short of infiltrating a god's personal palace, the Arcanoloth seems capable of being anyone and doing anything and never getting caught or leaving any trace. The Arcanoloth is everything the Rakshasa wishes it could be. We are now treading in the territory of some of the most amazing creatures in all of D&D. It's hard to think of a monster that could surpass the Merrenoloth in terms of style and lore, and it has a number of really cool abilities too, including layer actions and regional effects, all in a CR 3 monster, again proving that high CR does not necessarily equal a better monster. You know the designers were onto something when as soon as you're done reading a monster entry, you have to write an adventure, or at least an encounter. The Merrenoloth is directly inspired by Charon, the ferryman of Hades from Greek mythology, and just drips with all kinds of potential. Mordenkainen's tome lists the Merrenoloth's alignment as neutral evil, like all Yugoloths, but I could see a strong case made for lawful evil or even lawful neutral. I kind of wish it wouldn't have been a Yugoloth, just because its style and lore stand so strongly on their own, and it also would have gotten a better name. The top creature on this list is positioned a mere nosewort ahead. The Night Hag is a fiend, that's right. While other hags are fey, the Night Hag portrays the classic witch who makes deals with the devil archetype. Where do I even begin? Hags already have some of the best lore and role-playing potential in D&D, as the figure of the witch is played so strongly into folklore and legends since time immemorial. The Night Hag is obsessed with tragedy and corruption, two immensely compelling themes in storytelling. She enters her victims' dreams, planting seeds of fear and wickedness, sapping the target's strength and hoping to compel it to commit evil. The hag's ultimate goal is to lead the target to its demise and capture its soul in her bag of souls. This monster is definitely a long-term or recurring villain type of monster. She has some decent offensive capabilities in direct combat, especially so if she has a coven, but she really shines throughout the course of time as she haunts the characters in their dreams and continually manipulates them, placing them in precarious situations in which they must make difficult choices. All in all, the Night Hag is a foe that has the potential to be one of the most memorable ever by virtue of all her built-in hooks. Wow, what an assortment of fiends. There really were some fantastic ones on this list. And reflecting over all that I read and analyzed, I feel a sort of emptiness with many of the Yugoloths. Maybe this is just due to my having never used them previously, or maybe it's because their base lore doesn't have a lot of substance to it. As we saw in A tier and upper B tier, the potential really is there for them to have some depth and inspiring mythical connections. I also want to take a quick second to give a big thanks to all my supporters on Patreon. Your support is a big motivation for me to make these videos and more. I'm also creating original monsters and maps every month featuring the concepts of my patrons. Check out my Patreon link in the video description or sign up for my free newsletter if you just want to dabble for the time being. Also down in the video description, I'm putting a link to my Discord server. Feel free to join in the main channel there. I have a ton of ideas for more of these ranking videos, but if you have a suggestion, leave it in a comment below, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. This is Esper, wishing you monstrously good games, and as always, may your adventures be many.